Step out of the vehicle now. The command cut through the late afternoon air, sharp and controlled, the kind of voice that didn't expect to be questioned. Naomi Carter froze with one hand still resting on the open door of her black Mercedes, the leather interior catching the warm glow of the setting sun like polished glass. For half a second, everything felt suspended. The distant hum of traffic, the low murmur of shoppers drifting across the parking lot, the soft click of her key fob still echoing in her palm. Then the weight of eyes settled in. People slowed down. Heads turned. Phones lifted. Naomi straightened slowly, her heartbeat steady but loud in her ears, each pulse measured, deliberate, like she was counting something no one else could hear. She turned toward the voice. Officer Ryan Cole stood a few feet away, posture rigid, one hand resting near his belt, gaze locked onto her with a certainty that felt already decided. "Is there a problem, officer?" she asked, her voice calm, not raised, not trembling, just present. The question hung there, simple, but it didn't soften anything. If anything, it made the space tighter. Cole stepped closer, his boots scraping lightly against the asphalt, the sound dry and final. This vehicle was reported stolen. A pause. Not long, but long enough for the words to land, to spread, to take shape in the minds of everyone listening. Naomi blinked once, slow. The car behind her reflected everything. The sky, the storefronts, the people gathering, but not a single one of them stepped forward. "That's not possible," she said, still even, her fingers loosening from the door as she let it swing shut with a soft, controlled click. The sound felt small compared to the silence that followed. Somewhere to her left, someone whispered. Somewhere behind her, a phone camera adjusted focus. Cole didn't look away. Step away from the car. Not louder, just firmer. Naomi took one step back, then another, her sneakers brushing against painted parking lines, the white stripes sharp against the dark pavement. She could feel the heat of the day still rising from the ground, mixing with the cool shift of evening air settling in. It wrapped around her like a quiet pressure. "Officer, the car is registered to me," she said, meeting his eyes now, not defiant, not pleading, just steady. "You can check." For a fraction of a second, something flickered across his face. Not doubt. Not yet. Just irritation, like the script had been interrupted. "We'll handle that," he replied, already reaching for his radio. The words felt procedural, automatic, but the way the crowd leaned in made them heavier. Naomi's gaze drifted, just slightly, catching her own reflection in the car's surface. Her face calm, shoulders squared, posture unbroken. It didn't match the story forming around her. And that was the strangest part. Not the accusation, not the stares, but how quickly a moment could decide who you were, before you ever got the chance to speak again. Naomi did not move again after that second step back, but her mind did, slipping quietly through the noise, past the murmurs and the shifting feet, back to something steadier, something real, like the worn wooden table in her mother's apartment where bills were sorted under a single dim light, where numbers mattered more than opinions, and every dollar had a place before it even arrived. She had learned early that nothing in her life came by accident. Not the late nights balancing coursework with double shifts. Not the acceptance letter folded carefully inside her backpack. Not even this car sitting behind her now, its engine still ticking softly as it cooled. A machine earned, not borrowed, not imagined. Officer Cole spoke into his radio, his voice low and clipped, codes and identifiers spilling out in a rhythm that sounded practiced, detached from the moment itself, like he was already somewhere else, somewhere cleaner, somewhere without eyes watching. Naomi listened without reacting, her breathing slow, measured, each inhale filling her chest fully before leaving just as controlled, the way her mother had taught her when things felt like they might tilt too far. Around them, the parking lot had shifted. A loose circle had formed, not close enough to intervene, but close enough to witness. A woman in a beige coat held her phone at chest height, pretending not to record while adjusting the angle every few seconds. A teenage boy whispered to his friend, both of them glancing between Naomi and the officer like they were trying to piece together a story in real time. The air carried the faint scent of gasoline and hot pavement, mixed with something colder, something harder to name, like assumptions settling in before truth had a chance to arrive. Naomi's eyes drifted once more to the car, to the reflection that stretched across its surface, bending the world slightly, turning straight lines into curves, making everything look just a little off from what it actually was. She thought about the day she first sat behind that wheel, the quiet hum of the engine, the way her hands had rested on the steering wheel for a moment longer than necessary, not because she did not know how to drive, but because she needed to feel it, to confirm it was real, that something in her life had finally aligned exactly as it should. "Ma'am," Cole said again, pulling her back, his tone unchanged, still carrying that same quiet authority. "Do not move any closer to the vehicle." Naomi did not respond right away. She did not need to. Her stillness said enough. But inside, something sharpened, not anger, not fear, just clarity, like a line being drawn where there had not been one before. She understood what was happening, not just the words being spoken, but the space around them, the way the crowd leaned toward one version of the story without waiting for the rest. She understood how quickly ownership could be questioned when it did not match expectation, how easily effort could be erased by a single assumption. Her fingers curled slightly at her sides, not in tension, but in grounding, anchoring herself to the moment as it unfolded. Somewhere in the distance, a siren echoed faintly, not urgent, just present, blending into the rhythm of the city continuing on without pause. Naomi lifted her chin just a fraction, her gaze steady, her posture unchanged, as if she had already decided that whatever came next would not define her, only reveal what was already there. The radio on Officer Cole's shoulder crackled softly, a low burst of static breaking through the stillness like a thin line of tension finally pulling tight. And for a moment no one spoke. Not him, not Naomi, not the crowd that had grown just enough to feel like a presence rather than a coincidence. Their attention fixed in that quiet space between accusation and proof. Cole lifted his hand slightly, pressing the device closer, his head tilting just enough to listen, his expression unchanged on the surface, but holding something more rigid underneath, like he was bracing for confirmation rather than seeking it. Naomi watched. Without turning her head, her eyes steady, her body still aligned with the same calm she had held since the first command was given. But inside, her awareness sharpened further, every detail registering with clarity, the faint breeze brushing against her sleeves, the distant rumble of a passing truck somewhere beyond the lot, the subtle shift of someone stepping closer behind her, close enough that she could feel the movement without seeing it. "Run that again," Cole said into the radio, his tone controlled but tighter now, the words coming out a fraction slower than before. A pause followed, longer this time, stretching just enough to let doubt begin to exist, not spoken, not visible, but present in the space between seconds. Naomi's gaze dropped briefly to the ground, to the painted line at her feet, white against gray, clean and defined, something that did not change depending on who looked at it. She inhaled once, steady and full, then lifted her eyes again, not toward the officer, but toward the reflection in the car, where the scene continued to play out in silence, distorted but unmistakable. In that reflection, she saw the phones raised higher now, more deliberate, no longer pretending. She saw the slight lean of bodies angling for a better view, the quiet agreement forming without words. And she understood something deeper than the moment itself, something that had nothing to do with the car or the accusation, but everything to do with how quickly certainty could be assigned without evidence, how easily a narrative could settle into place before truth had even arrived. The radio responded again, the voice on the other end clearer this time, more precise, numbers and identifiers spoken with the kind of neutrality that did not belong to anyone in the parking lot. Cole's jaw shifted almost imperceptibly as he listened, his eyes flicking once toward the vehicle, then back to Naomi, then away again, like he was recalibrating something he had not expected to question. "Stand by," he replied, his voice quieter now, not carrying as far, but still audible in the hush that had taken over the space. Naomi did not move. She did not need to. The ground beneath her felt steady, unchanged, even as the air around her shifted. A child somewhere near the edge of the crowd asked a question too softly to make out, and an adult hushed them quickly, as if the moment required silence to continue. Naomi's fingers relaxed at her sides, the tension that had never fully formed now dissolving into something else, something more grounded, more certain. She knew what the truth was, not because she needed to prove it, but because she had lived every step that led to it. The long hours, the early mornings, the quiet decisions made when no one was watching. All of it existed whether anyone here believed it or not. And as she stood there, in the center of a moment that had tried to define her before she could speak, she remained exactly who she had been before it began, unchanged, waiting not for permission, but for reality to catch up. The silence did not break all at once. It shifted, slowly, like air pressure changing before a storm, and Naomi felt it before she saw it. The subtle hesitation in the way Officer Cole held his stance, the fraction of a second longer he kept his hand on the radio before lowering it, the way his shoulders no longer leaned forward with certainty, but hovered somewhere in between action and reconsideration. Dispatch confirmed the plate. The voice on the radio came through again, clearer now, each word measured, official, untouched by the tension in the parking lot. Vehicle is registered to Naomi Carter. No active theft report. The words did not echo, they settled, heavy and undeniable, spreading outward through the crowd in a quiet wave that did not need volume to be heard. Naomi did not react immediately. She did not need to. The truth did not require urgency. It simply existed, solid and unmoving, like the ground beneath her feet. Cole's jaw tightened, just slightly, his eyes shifting once more toward the car, then back to Naomi, as if the space between them had changed shape without his permission. For the first time, he did not speak right away. The authority in his posture loosened, not collapsing, but no longer rigid, like something recalibrating in real time. Around them, the crowd adjusted too, the same people who had leaned in with quiet certainty now stepping back just a fraction, their phones still raised but their expressions altered, curiosity replacing assumption, silence replacing commentary. A man near the front lowered his device halfway, his brows pulling together as if he was trying to understand how quickly the story had shifted. Naomi remained still, her shoulders relaxed, her chin level, her breathing unchanged. She had not moved through the accusation, and she did not move through the correction. The moment passed through her, not defining, not reshaping, only revealing what had always been there. Cole finally exhaled, a controlled release, and stepped back once, creating space where there had been none. "You are free to go," he said, the words formal, procedural, but lacking the same weight they carried before. They landed differently now, not as a command, but as an adjustment. Naomi's eyes met his, steady, not searching for apology, not demanding explanation, just holding the moment long enough to acknowledge it for what it was. Then she turned, slow and deliberate, her hand reaching for the door handle of the car, the metal cool beneath her fingers. The reflection on the surface shifted as she moved, the crowd bending and stretching across the paint before settling again. She opened the door without hesitation, the soft sound of it breaking the stillness more effectively than any voice had. For a second, she paused, not because she was unsure, but because the moment itself deserved that pause, that quiet acknowledgement of everything that had just unfolded. The air felt different now, lighter in some ways, heavier in others, carrying the residue of something that could not be undone but could be understood. Naomi slid into the driver's seat, the familiar interior grounding her instantly, the steering wheel steady beneath her hands, exactly where it had always been. Outside, the crowd began to disperse, not all at once, but in small, uncertain movements, as if unsure how to exit a moment that had already ended. Cole remained where he stood, his figure reflected faintly in the side of the car, no longer the center of the scene, just another part of it. Naomi closed the door gently, the sound final, contained, and as the engine started with a smooth, quiet hum, the world around her continued forward, but not unchanged. The engine's quiet hum settled into a steady rhythm beneath Naomi's hands, low and controlled, like something dependable finally reclaiming its place. And for a moment, she did not move the car at all, her fingers resting lightly on the steering wheel as the world outside shifted without her. People turning away, conversations restarting. In hushed tones, the ordinary flow of the afternoon trying to resume as if nothing had happened. But something had, and it lingered in the air like heat rising from the asphalt long after the sun had begun to dip. Through the windshield, she could still see Officer Cole in the reflection of the glass storefront across the lot. His figure smaller now, no longer centered, no longer commanding, just standing there with a stillness that did not match the authority he had carried minutes before. Naomi exhaled slowly, her breath steady, her shoulders relaxing into the seat, the leather cool against her back, grounding her in something tangible, something real. She shifted the gear into drive, the motion smooth, practiced, and eased her foot onto the accelerator, the car rolling forward with quiet precision, not rushed, not hesitant, just moving as it was always meant to. The parking lines passed beneath her in clean, even intervals, each one marking distance, not just across the lot, but away from the moment that had tried to define her before it understood her. As she approached the exit, the sunlight stretched across the hood of the car, reflecting in long, golden lines that flickered with motion, and for a second, she caught her own reflection again in the rearview mirror, her expression unchanged, calm, composed, but deeper now, like something inside her had settled into clarity. Behind her, the crowd had already begun to dissolve, the circle breaking apart into individuals once more, their attention pulled back into their own lives, their own timelines, leaving the space behind her open, as if the moment had never fully belonged to them to begin with. Naomi turned onto the street, the tires gliding over the smooth pavement, the city opening up in front of her, traffic lights blinking in steady patterns, cars passing in both directions, everything moving forward without pause. But inside the car, time felt slightly different, not slower, not faster, just more defined, each second carrying weight, each thought landing with intention. She replayed the moment in fragments, not the accusation itself, but the space around it, the way certainty had formed without question, the way silence had filled the gaps where understanding should have been. It was not new to her, not entirely, but this time it had been louder, more visible, placed under a lens that did not allow it to hide. Her grip on the wheel remained light, her posture steady, but her awareness sharpened, not in fear, not in anger, but in something stronger, something rooted. She knew what had happened was not just a misunderstanding, not just a moment that could be dismissed and forgotten. It had shape. It had pattern. And patterns, she had learned, did not change unless someone chose to challenge them. The city blocks passed one by one, storefronts giving way to intersections to long stretches of road lined with trees, just beginning to catch the warm tones of early evening. Naomi drove without rushing, her movements precise, deliberate, as if every turn, every stop, every acceleration carried intention beyond the action itself. The world outside continued as it always had, but inside the quiet space of the car, something had shifted, not visible, not loud, but undeniable, like a line drawn in place, waiting not to be crossed again, but to be recognized for what it was. The city began to quiet as Naomi turned onto a narrower street lined with older houses, their porches catching the last light of the evening like still frames in a memory, and she eased her foot off the accelerator, letting the car slow naturally, the engine softening into a low, steady presence beneath her, almost like a breath that did not belong to her, but moved with her anyway. She pulled over near the curb, the tires rolling to a gentle stop, and for the first time since the parking lot, she allowed the silence to fully arrive, not the silence of people watching, not the silence of judgment forming, but a deeper one, where nothing was being decided except what she chose to carry forward. Her hands remained on the steering wheel for a moment longer, fingers relaxed, her thumbs resting lightly against the smooth surface, and she closed her eyes briefly, not to escape the day, but to feel it settle into place. The air inside the car was warm, faintly scented with leather and something clean, something new, and outside, a breeze moved through the trees, the sound of leaves brushing together soft and distant, like a quiet reminder that the world did not hold on to moments the way people did. Naomi leaned back slightly in her seat, her shoulders easing into the support behind her, and exhaled slowly, the tension she had never fully shown now releasing in a controlled, almost invisible way. It was not exhaustion, not exactly, but something close to it, the kind that came from holding steady when everything around you expected you to break or react or become something else entirely. She opened her eyes and looked forward, not at anything specific, just at the space in front of her, the windshield framing a stretch of quiet road where nothing was happening and nothing needed to. Her mind did not rush. It moved carefully, touching each part of what had happened without letting it take control. She thought about the officer's voice, the certainty in it, the way it had filled the space before any facts had been checked. She thought about the crowd, how quickly they had gathered, how easily they had leaned into one version of the story, how silence had followed when that version fell apart. And then she thought about herself, not in the way they had seen her, but in the way she knew herself to be, built through years of small, consistent choices that no one had witnessed, decisions made when there was no audience, no validation, no reason to continue except that stopping had never been an option. The sky above had shifted into deeper shades now, the blue fading into something richer, something quieter, and the streetlights began to hum softly as they flickered on one by one, casting pools of warm light onto the pavement. Naomi reached up and adjusted the rearview mirror slightly, not because it was out of place, but because the motion itself grounded her, a small, intentional action that reminded her she was still in control of her direction, her movement, her next step. In the reflection, her eyes met her own, steady, clear, not searching for reassurance, not questioning what had just happened, but acknowledging it as part of something larger, something that would not be ignored, not this time. She rested her hand briefly against the center of the steering wheel, feeling the quiet vibration of the engine beneath her palm, and in that stillness, something settled into certainty, not loud, not dramatic, but firm, like a decision made without needing to be spoken out loud, a line drawn not in anger, but in clarity, one that would not be erased simply because others had chosen not to see it before. Naomi opened the door slowly, the quiet click of it breaking the stillness just enough to mark a shift, and stepped out onto the pavement, the evening air cooler now, brushing lightly against her skin as the last traces of sunlight faded behind the rooftops. She stood beside the car for a moment, one hand resting on the top edge of the door, her fingers tracing the smooth line of the metal without really thinking about it, grounding herself in something physical, something unchanged. The street around her remained calm, a few distant cars passing, their headlights stretching across the asphalt in long, moving beams, and somewhere down the block a porch light flicked on with a soft hum. Naomi reached into her bag and pulled out her phone, the screen lighting up her face in a pale glow, notifications stacked one after another, messages she had not seen while everything unfolded earlier. She paused before opening any of them, her thumb hovering just above the screen, as if she already knew what they would contain before reading a single word. Then she tapped one. A video began to play instantly, the angle slightly tilted, the audio distant but clear enough to recognize. It was the parking lot. Her car. The officer's voice. Her own figure standing still in the center of it all. She watched without expression, her eyes steady, following the moment from the outside now, seeing what everyone else had seen, hearing the tone, the certainty, the silence that followed. Another notification appeared, then another, links, messages, unfamiliar names reaching out, reacting, sharing, questioning. The moment had not stayed in that parking lot. It had moved, expanded, taken shape in places she had not been, in screens she would never see. Naomi lowered the phone slightly, her gaze lifting from the screen to the quiet street in front of her, the contrast sharp, almost unreal. Here, nothing had changed. The trees still moved gently in the breeze. The houses stood still, unchanged. But somewhere beyond this block, beyond this moment, something had already begun to shift. She looked back at the screen, her thumb scrolling once, slowly, reading fragments of comments, some confused, some supportive, some already forming conclusions just as quickly as before, but this time the truth was there too, visible, undeniable, recorded. Her reflection appeared faintly on the screen as it dimmed. Her face layered over the frozen image of the video, past and present overlapping for a second before the display went dark again. Naomi locked the phone and let her hand fall to her side, the device resting lightly in her grip. She did not need to watch it again. She already understood what it meant. This was no longer just a moment she had experienced. It was evidence. It was a record that could not be reshaped by memory or dismissed by assumption. She closed the car door gently and leaned back against it, her shoulders touching the cool surface, her gaze lifting toward the streetlights that now cast steady pools of light along the road. Her breathing remained even, her posture relaxed, but her thoughts had settled into something sharper, more defined. The line she had felt earlier, the one drawn quietly inside her, now had weight, direction, purpose. Not reaction, not anger, but intention. She knew what came next would not be loud, would not be rushed, but it would be deliberate. And as she stood there in the quiet of the evening, the echoes of the day no longer overwhelming but clear, she did not feel smaller because of what had happened. She felt seen, not by the crowd that had gathered, but by something deeper, something that had always been there, waiting for the moment when silence would no longer be enough. The next morning arrived without announcement, just a gradual shift of light pressing softly through Naomi's window, pale gold spreading across the walls as the city woke in quiet layers, and she stood near her desk already dressed, her posture straight, her expression calm in a way that no longer needed effort to maintain. Her phone rested beside her, screen dark, but she knew what waited behind it. Messages that had multiplied overnight, notifications that had turned a single moment into something larger, something that now existed beyond her control, but not beyond her response. She reached for it, unlocking the screen with a steady hand, her eyes moving across the updates without rushing, reading not for reaction, but for understanding, for clarity. The video had spread further, the same clip replayed from different angles, slowed down, paused, analyzed by voices she had never heard, people forming opinions, asking questions, drawing lines between what they saw and what they believed it meant. Some defended her without knowing her, others doubted without evidence, but the truth remained unchanged, anchored in the same quiet certainty it had always held. Naomi set the phone down again, not dismissing it, but placing it where it belonged, a tool, not a weight. She turned toward the small folder on her desk, the edges worn slightly from use, papers inside aligned with careful precision. She opened it, her fingers moving over the documents one by one, registration, insurance, records that told a story not through emotion, but through fact, each page carrying proof of ownership, of responsibility, of effort. She did not linger on them long. She did not need to. She already knew what they said. But today, they meant something more. They were no longer just her records. They were evidence. Naomi closed the folder gently and picked up her keys, the soft jingle of metal against metal marking a transition, not dramatic, not loud, but final in its own way. Outside, the air carried the crispness of early morning, the streets beginning to fill with movement, cars passing in steady patterns, people stepping into their routines, unaware of the shift taking place within her. She walked with measured steps, her pace unhurried, her gaze forward, not avoiding the world, not challenging it, simply moving through it with the same quiet presence she had always carried. When she reached the car, she paused for a moment, her reflection appearing faintly in the window, the glass holding her image alongside the street behind her, two perspectives layered together. She did not look away. She opened the door and slid into the driver's seat, placing the folder carefully on the passenger side, within reach, not hidden, not set aside. As the engine started, the familiar hum returned, steady, reliable, and she placed her hands on the steering wheel with intention, not just to drive, but to move forward with purpose. The road ahead stretched out, intersections waiting, decisions to be made, and Naomi did not hesitate. She pulled away from the curb smoothly, merging into the flow of traffic, her movements precise, deliberate, each turn guided not by impulse, but by something clearer, something grounded. This was no longer about what had happened in a parking lot. It was about what would follow, about choosing not to let silence close over something that had already been seen, already been recorded, already been understood. As she drove, the city unfolded around her, buildings rising, streets intersecting, the rhythm of movement continuing as it always had. But within that rhythm, she carried something different now, not anger, not urgency, but resolve, quiet and unshakable, like a line drawn with intention, one that would not be erased simply because others had once chosen not to see it. The building stood tall and quiet, its glass exterior reflecting the late morning sky in clean, uninterrupted lines, and Naomi slowed as she approached the entrance, the car easing into a stop along the curb with the same controlled precision she had carried through every step since the day before. She turned off the engine, and for a moment, there was only stillness again, not empty, not uncertain, but full, like something that had finally reached its natural place. The folder beside her remained exactly where she had placed it, edges aligned, papers inside unchanged, yet now carrying a weight that was no longer just personal, but purposeful. Naomi reached for it, her fingers steady, and stepped out of the car, the sound of the door closing behind her soft but final, echoing just enough against the building's surface to mark her presence without announcing it. People moved in and out of the entrance ahead, conversations low, footsteps measured, the ordinary rhythm of a place where decisions were made not with noise, but with clarity. Naomi walked forward, her pace even, her posture upright, the morning light catching along the edges of her silhouette as she crossed the pavement, each step grounded, each movement intentional. The glass doors opened as she approached, a quiet motion, almost automatic, and as she stepped inside, the air shifted cooler, cleaner, the outside world falling away without resistance. The lobby stretched wide and calm, polished floors reflecting light in soft patterns, the sound of distant voices blending into a low, steady hum that did not demand attention. Naomi did not hesitate. She moved toward the reception desk, her reflection following her across the floor, not distorted now, not fragmented, just clear, aligned with who she was and what she had come to do. She placed the folder gently on the counter, the soft contact of paper against stone carrying more meaning than any raised voice could. The receptionist looked up, offering a polite, neutral expression, unaware of the full weight behind the moment, and Naomi met that gaze with the same quiet steadiness she had carried from the beginning. "I would like to speak with someone about filing a formal claim," she said, her voice calm, even, each word measured, not rushed, not forced, simply stated as truth. There was no tension in her tone, no need to explain beyond what was necessary. The facts would do that. The evidence would do that. The moment had already been seen, already been recorded, already been understood in ways that could not be undone. As the receptionist nodded and reached for the folder, Naomi released it without hesitation, her hands returning to her sides, empty now, but not lacking, because what she carried could not be placed on a desk or passed across a counter. It lived in her posture, in her voice, in the quiet certainty that had guided her here. Behind her, the glass doors opened and closed again, people entering, leaving, the world continuing in its steady motion. But Naomi remained exactly where she stood, not waiting in uncertainty, but standing in something solid, something earned. Outside, the sunlight reflected across the hood of her car, a brief flash of brightness against the glass, then gone, leaving only the quiet presence of what remained. And inside, without noise, without spectacle, without the need for anything more, the weight of the moment settled into place, not as an ending, but as a beginning shaped by clarity, by truth, and by a strength that had never needed permission to exist.